I was asking this question, this very scary question, 6 months into COVID of, did I marry the right person? Should we get a divorce?
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey guys, it's Leah. Welcome back to today's episode of Behavior Bitches Podcast. We are back up and rolling with the podcast. I guess you guys never know what's going on, but I had taken a couple month break because I had so many podcasts in the bank. But then when I come back, you got to get back into the rhythm. I have to figure out how I say hey, it's Liat, the whole thing going on here. But we have great guests, so it makes it a lot easier. Today, I'm going to go ahead and get right on into the podcast. So our guest today, this is a topic that I think a lot of us struggle with, and this guest speaks on it and writes about it. So let's get into it. We have Elizabeth Weingarten. She's an author, journalist, and applied behavioral scientist who works at the intersection of science and storytelling. A Northwestern University journalism graduate, she has written for The Atlantic, Slate, Harvard Business Review, The Financial Times, and Time, and served as managing editor of Behavior Scientist. She has led research programs at the think tank New America, the nonprofit Ideas 42, and tech companies Torch and Udemy. That's really cool. Her debut book, How to Fall in Love with Questions, A New Way to Thrive in Times of Uncertainty, has become featured in the Washington Post, the Financial Times, Forbes, and Inc. magazine, and was a Next Big Idea Club finalist. She's spoken at South by Southwest, the United Nations, Stanford, and the LA Times Festival of Books. She lives in Northern California with her husband and young son. Isn't it crazy hearing your own intro always? Welcome.
It is.
You're cool. You've done a lot. You're a big deal. Just to remind you. Welcome, Elizabeth.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. How old is your son?
He is almost 2. He'll be 2 next month.
Oh, so. Nice. Okay. I have a 5-year-old. It just gets better. Yeah. It gets better.
It seems that way. I feel like every phase, I'm like, how could this be better than the last phase? And then I just think as they start to be able to talk to you, it's completely game changing.
It's incredible. As these behavioral cusps open, as we call it, it's like, whoa, we could do so much cool stuff now.
Totally. They're just so much fun, just such agents of chaos and creation. And it's a joy every day.
It's so fun. I totally agree. All right. So I need to ask a question here because, I'm working in a very specific part of of behavior analysis and applied behavior analysis, which where a lot of our listeners who are either studying to become or are BCBAs, board certified behavior analyst, which to anyone listening on the outside, both Martha, who works with me, and Julia are not in this field. I mean, by working here, they are. And they're like, what is the difference between a BCBA and a behavioral scientist? And so I'm just going to say quickly what a BCBA is for anyone listening and then I need you to actually tell me as well, what journey you went down to be a behavioral scientist.
Yeah.
So anyone listening, in case you don't know, a BCBA or board certified behavior analyst, which is the exam that I help people study for and pass, means that you have gone to school, you've got a master's degree in applied behavior analysis, and you've completed your 2,000 hours, supervised hours, and then sat for the exam to get your BCBA credential. And with that credential, the only thing that it really helps you with is if you are billing insurance. So if you work in the autism population, you could bill insurance the same way that a pediatrician could bill for services. So for anyone who has that confusion, does that clear it up for you, Martha? You got it? Okay, you got it. But so as far as I know, I mean, you could still I could still say, oh, I'm a behavioral scientist, but just for billing purposes, which I'm not billing, that's what makes it a BCBA. But I want to hear what you did.
Sure.
To call yourself a behavioral scientist. What road did you go down?
Totally. So I think what's interesting about this field is that, as you suggest, there are lots of different ways to kind of develop an expertise. There is that academic route, which you're describing, one academic path. And I was actually kind of at a crossroads with this, maybe, close to, was it 10 years ago at this point? Maybe a little less. Anyway, I was trying to decide between going to a master's program, behavioral science master's programs, and even a PhD program, all for the purpose of I wanted to work at an applied behavioral science firm. And I wanted to, and what that means is that this organization that I wanted to work for, basically what they do is they work with clients who are having kind of real world problems. So, say, for instance, you work for a Department of Transportation in a city, and you really want more people to choose a climate friendly transportation option, right? Like you have a lot of people, they're driving cars, single occupancy vehicles, SOVs, right? And you really want more people to take the bus or more people to take the light rail. In that context, you might be thinking, okay, well, how might we kind of leverage what we know about human behavior to try to influence people to do this thing that's going to be better for the planet? So that's just an example of so many different types of challenges that, you might call them kind of those like behavioral social good challenges. The idea, for this particular firm was applying the research that academics produce to real world problems and testing that research and seeing whether that research actually helps solve the problem in the real world. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So this particular firm, Ideas 42, where I worked for a couple of years, essentially kind of used to do like big literature reviews to understand, okay, what is the scope of research looks like that has maybe solved similar problems in the past, and then how do we build like a testing intervention to be able to see if we can solve this problem in a real world situation. But to go back to this crossroads that I was at, I really wanted to work at a place like Ideas 42. I thought it would be really cool to do applied behavioral science, again applying that academic research to
Like,
real
what are
world
those
problems.
roles called? Because people ask me this all the time, but I'm like so like narrowed down one. Like, what
Yeah.
would a job like that be called?
So my role when I was there was senior associate, and then like I think some people are like behavioral design, or I don't know exactly what, like I know their roles have changed since I was there, but when I was trying to decide what I was going to do, ultimately what I realized was I had applied for all these grad school programs, and then I had applied for a job there. I ended up getting the job there and realized, well, I was only going to go to the grad school programs to get this job.
Uh-huh.
And so why don't I just try to learn as much as I can on the job? And so that was, it was a tricky thing because I love school, I love being in academia, but I was like, well, if I can not have the debt that I would
Right.
incur
I mean,
in a program and just learn these skills while I'm there. So that was really my journey. It was a little bit non-traditional, but it was working in a job where I was applying behavioral science to real world problems, learning this kind of unique methodology. But anyway, hopefully that helps, but I can answer
no,
any
it
more
does
questions
because
that
I'm
you have.
I'm thinking if someone I know is like a BCBA working at an ABA clinic, I know they went down the exact same path. I mean, like however they got there, but I know they did like the coursework, whatever it is. But like when I speak, I mean, I'm always just fascinated by like behavioral economics and neuroscience, and not everyone has like the exact same path that probably led them to say like Think 42, right?
Ideas 42. Right.
Idea
Totally.
42. Sorry, I rebranded.
I like it. I like it.
You guys were thinking,
Absolutely.
right?
We were presumably we were spending some of our time thinking. Yes. This is pre AI, so we had to do all of our own thinking
Oh, wild.
ourselves.
Wow.
So,
Sounds like
I
a lot of
know.
work.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay, so I just want to get a couple questions to get to know you before we get started. Always like
Yeah.
to, in behaviors, we call pair, build that rapport. So, what is your most used emoji?
Ooh. Probably the melting face recently. Parent of a toddler. I feel like, yes, we talked about there's lots of joy having a toddler, also a lot of melting face emoji. So
Right.
that is probably my
I
most
feel like mine is like this flat one. Like,
yeah, that's also a good one. Sometimes mine is the zany one with like a tongue stuck out,
oh,
like
I know
trying to
exactly.
just
Yeah.
be like a little bit more irreverent with it, but
That that's a good one. What was your last um AI search? So, I don't know if you're a Claude girly, if you're a chat girly,
totally.
what's the last thing you looked up?
Yeah, so the last thing I looked up was about, so again, parenting stuff. We've been going through, it's funny, people have very different perspectives on sleep training and kids sleep and everything. We're going through some kind of regression where we're having to kind of redo
Oh,
some
that
of the
sucks.
training
Yeah.
that we
I
did.
remember that. It really
So I
sucks.
was like asking it, just about different methods, especially when your kid is 2 and things are different than when they were like 6 months old. So that was my last AI check-in.
Did it give you any, was it helpful?
I mean, kind of. Like, I think that it's more, sometimes I do feel like it's more of a like kind of crutch than anything, or it just kind of validates something that I already thought to do or knew to do. So I think in particular when it comes to parenting things, it's very important to be present to what your kid is actually doing and needs versus like AI tells me to do this, right? So
But it
it's
will cheer you
helpful
on. It'll be like, hey, you're a great mom. The fact that you're thinking about that. Love that you're thinking
right.
about that and you value sleep. That means that you want to be the best to show up for your son the next day.
Totally, totally. So yeah, there are like certain things that it's helpful just like factually, like, oh, your kid, they need like a longer sleep window or like, wake to wake window, right? As they get older and like, oh yeah, it's becomes 6 hours instead of 4.5 or whatever it is. So that kind of stuff when it's backed by research is helpful
Yeah.
directionally and interesting. But when it comes to like the actual strategies, I'm still very much thinking about what's going to work for my family and my son versus like I'm just going to copy
Right.
and paste it
Yeah.
into
No,
my
you
life.
just like you do what works as long as you're getting
Yeah,
sleep. That's what you do.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Your most useless talent. Do you have one?
Oh gosh, yes. I well, you know what? I think that this talent is atrophying, but I used to be a championship hula hooper. So when I was a kid,
Me
I would
too.
just
At
like
bat
win.
mitzvahs, like get at me. Like even if we had to have
Oh,
like a
for sure.
battle.
100%. I could battle. I could like walk with the hula hoop and like knock it off of other
A
people. I
thousand
would like
percent.
win the blue ribbon at my like 4th of July hula hoop contest every year.
Yes.
Um, so I don't know. I feel like childbirth, like I can't really do it quite as well, but I need to get back into it
No,
because it is
also
a
I
good
just like I don't find hula hoops as quality as they used to be. Like when I was at bat mitzvahs, like the ones I do now, like they
yeah.
have no beads in them. Like they're like half the size. Like they're not like solid size. So like obviously I'm not getting like any movement. So then I
You
like
know what?
actually
You're
looked up.
right.
I actually looked up like can I get a good hula hoop? And then it's like oh like there's like these exercise ones that like or like these ones that like people use at like raves
Yeah.
that are like $500. And I was like okay like I'm not
What?
that into hula hooping. Like you can get them on like Etsy.
Oh, that's no, that yeah, that's insane.
So like
I
it's like you're not atrophying. That's what I just want you to know. Like the quality of the hula hoop is gotten progressively shittier.
I appreciate you saying this because you're making me realize that every time I try hula hooping now, the hula hoop it's too small and it's often like kind of bent or like something is
And
wrong
there's
with
no
the hula hoop.
like beads for rhythm. Like there used to be.
Yeah.
Now like okay, this is like I really have noticed it because like the type of hula hoops that are being used for like events for like kids, like you go to a jamboree class, right? Like you go with your kid to
Yeah.
a jamboree class, they're handing them the hula hoop that were like hula hoops that were not meant to be hula hoop with. Like they were meant to be used in PE class to like throw the bean bags in or like the little, and like it's like that's not for hula hooping. And I just feel like the world needs to know that hula hoops these days are just not the same.
This is, you know what? I think this is a campaign. This is a global campaign that we've just launched here.
Yeah,
Bring
they're
back
not the same.
the
Skip
quality
its are
hula
not
hoop.
the same. Like, if you ever tried a modern day skip it, did you ever skip it
No.
when you were younger?
I think I probably did it like friends' houses. I just never had the cool toys in my house.
Oh, well,
Were you like that? Like, were you like, my house was never the cool house. We didn't have the cool snacks. We didn't have the cool toys.
no, I didn't
I
have
had
the
to go
cool
to other people's
snacks, but
house.
that was like a kosher issue because like,
Ah, okay.
so like we
Yeah, yeah,
couldn't. That was a problem there. But toys, no, I didn't have like the coolest. I definitely had friends who were like, but like skip it felt like. I mean, I guess I did. I had a skip it, a Furby, a Tamagotchi.
I had a Tamagotchi. Yeah, that was
Okay, so you weren't like
classic.
totally like depleted of a childhood. That's good.
No. No, I had some, but it never felt like, grass is always greener. You always feel like other kids have all the cool stuff.
Yeah,
So,
that's life. Always.
yes.
Even now with my own kid, when he chooses which toy out of the two he wants, as soon after he has it, he's like, "That's not the one I wanted." I'm like, "Bro, we bought it. You opened it. Like, you get it." That's just life
Totally.
of a kid.
Totally. Yes.
All right. So we're about to get into today the topic of uncertainty. And I know that, I mean, we are an anxious nation, world. I mean, especially I could tell you in the field of, it's funny. In ABA, like there's almost like a specific type of person who becomes a BCBA. It's like you're
Mm.
in here because you are a control freak. You want to be able to
Mm.
control things. So it only makes sense that you get into the field where you're controlling behavior. Like I noticed that like most of my colleagues are like type A, want to control things. You know, they know exactly what's going on. I actually happen to be more of like a type B, but I, like any other person, struggle with uncertainty. Like other things in my life, like I want to know, what's happening. And
Yeah.
so this is what you have taken an interest in. And before we get into it, I just want to operationally define uncertainty. Can you give us a definition of what uncertainty is?
Yeah. So, I think my favorite definition comes from the book, actually. And I used a definition from a couple of psychologists who were writing a paper all about how decision makers conceptualize uncertainty. And they define uncertainty as a sense of doubt that blocks or delays action. I really liked this definition because out of all the definitions of uncertainty that I read, this one really gets at what I think is the lived experience of uncertainty, which is that sense that I think so many of us feel, which is we feel stuck. We feel paralyzed by uncertainty. Like we cannot move forward in our lives until we have the answers that we need. And so that is probably, it's a good place to start, right? Because it's a place, where I was coming from in my own life. And part of the reason that really drove me to write this book in the first place.
You know, I'm someone, I'm an action taker. I want to take an action for something. So, like,
Yeah.
you know, I also think of it as like a reason why we like want to get out of uncertainty so quickly is that for that negative reinforcement. Like that uncertainty serves as like this, like it's like so aversive to be there. Like who wants to be like not knowing what's happening? I want to know what's happening. Like, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Is it going to work out? Like, are we going to get a divorce? Are we not going to get a divorce? Like in
Yeah.
life in general, which I know you speak about that as well. So we'll talk about that. But do you think a lot of like the uncertainty part comes from like us wanting this negative reinforcement of like this relief of not sitting in the uncomfortable anymore?
Totally. So, one of the things that I found in the book and through my research is that we as humans are very much wired to want to reduce uncertainty and avoid uncertainty really at any cost. A big part of this is something called selfish brain theory. And the idea there is that our brains really kind of want to hold on to resources. They want to, anytime they want to conserve our metabolic energy whenever they can. And this is because we adapted and evolved for times when food was scarcer than it is now. So you can imagine that, for the brain, an uncertain situation is going to use up a lot more resources, a lot more kind of metabolic energy than a certain or predictable situation. So when we are in uncertainty, our brain is coding that as aversive, stressful, something that we should feel anxious about, something that we should try to avoid or reduce because it doesn't want to use the energy that it's going to take to navigate it. So, for us, that translates into feeling really stressed, feeling really anxious, feeling like I need to have the answer to this problem. I cannot sleep. I cannot do anything unless I just figure out what to do and move forward. So it's very, very hard for us biologically to kind of sit in that space of uncertainty.
So it's almost like a selectionism thing in terms of like for survival.
Yeah. I mean, there's a part of it for sure is, I think we are, it's on the one hand, it's a really good thing that
Like, because it's
we
like
are.
that we are looking for something like that serves us in the past, but like it's not necessarily beneficial always.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I get into in the book is that it makes sense why we're wired this way. And at the same time, this can really prevent us from getting the answers that we need in our lives, from being able to make the right decisions, kind of the biggest decisions in our lives. If we can't sit with uncertainty for longer, the risk that we run into is that we're seizing on what I call in the book kind of fast, easy answers. And maybe we're more vulnerable to people in the world. And I talk about, this a little bit in the book too, but the charlatans of certainty, right? The folks, the gurus, the experts, the kind of influencers out there who are really kind of exploiting folks in their most vulnerable moments and saying, hey, you're uncertain about this. Guess what? I have the 3-step plan. I know the answer to your big life question. So I think, right, there's a way in which it's really adaptive evolutionarily. And then there's a way in which, especially in our modern culture, it sets us up to be more lost than ever before.
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey, it's Liat. Want $100 off the Live Collective? Well, right now you can get that using coupon code EARLYAF. You'll get 12 weeks, which is filled with 24 classes of every single thing you need to know for the BCBA or BCABA exam. We will be your study trainers with everything you should be doing at exactly what time. If you're stressed about looking at the Cooper book, fear no more, we're here. Head on over to studynotesaba.com/collectives and grab your seat. So how does a journalist and applied scientist come to writing a book like this? Like, can you tell us your story?
Totally. So it was a very kind of unexpected path that starts with dating in Washington, D.C.
It always starts with dating and in Washington, D.C. That is like the worst experience of my life. Like,
100%.
Literally, I'm telling you, there's so many guys, so many of them were gay and they didn't know it.
Yes.
But like,
Oh
they
my gosh.
were.
Yes, totally. I used to this was something I remarked on a lot with friends, that I was like, this person is so lovely, but definitely.
Clearly, it's not like it takes like a neuroscientist to figure this out. It's like,
for sure.
Okay, yeah.
So I had dating in Washington, D.C., a huge struggle. One of the biggest struggles for me was I would go on dates with guys, this was in my mid-20s, who would not ask me a single question for the entire date. Not a one. And this happened once, happened twice. It started happening so much that at first I was complaining about it to all my friends. And then I was like, what's wrong with me? Something, I'm not interested, something's happening. And then because I have this kind of journalism background, I just started getting really curious about it. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is there some kind of larger behavioral thing going on, behavioral phenomenon where there's a difference in question asking behavior and kind of communication styles between men and women, or what's going on? So this really drove me to get very interested in the intersection of question asking and identity. And so kind of all of the ways that gender and other kind of forms of identity show up in kind of when we're asking questions, kind of what contexts, what does this tell us? And I ended up finding, among other things, that yes, women and men do exhibit different types of question asking behavior on dates. They seek to connect in different ways. Men tend to connect more based on kind of hierarchical and status information. Women tend to connect more based on shared experience and shared stories, which ends up sometimes leading to them asking more questions than men. Again, speaking in generalities, right? Like not all men, not all women, totally get that. So I'm kind of on this path intellectually. I'm really curious about questions, the way that they shape our personal lives, our professional lives. And as I'm researching all of this, COVID hits. And a couple of other things happened around that time of COVID and were happening along this trajectory. One was that I was dating a man who had recently become my husband, and our relationship had always been a little bit challenging, but in the few months since we had been married, things had been really, really hard. I can say more about this later on too, but I was asking this question, this very scary question, 6 months into COVID of, did I marry the right person? Should we get a divorce? So that was question number one. Question number two was...
I've been there.
Yeah.
Whoa,
ugh, so hard.
That sucks.
So hard, so lonely. Totally sucks. I had also left a job to pursue a creative project. And it had started out really promising, but like 6 months in, also to this creative project, no job, it was clear that it was not going to work. And I was like, what did I just do? I have no job. I maybe have no marriage. COVID is still going on. Like, I am feeling so uncertain. And in that moment, had this realization of like, all I want are answers, right? I was just going out and I was like feverishly searching for the right guru, blog, book, whatever to just tell me what to do in my career, in my marriage. And it was around that time that I found this book, Letters to a Young Poet, which we can write about, or which we can talk about in a moment. And it was this book of correspondence between this poet, Rainier Maria Rilke, and an aspiring poet, Franz Capus, written in the early 1900s. And one of the passages that really stuck out to me was this one where Franz Capus, this 19-year-old aspiring poet at the time, he's asking Rilke, this sage 27-year-old established poet, for life advice, right? He's like, how do I not only become a poet, but like, how do I live my life? Like, I'm so confused. Things are crazy, right? And Rilke, very famously, instead of telling him the answers, tells him that he has to, quote, learn to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a foreign tongue. And I was so struck by this on many counts. One was, I thought it was a beautiful idea. But the second was, Leah, I had never felt further away in my life from loving the questions.
Yeah, I
And I
literally was like,
yeah, beautiful idea. What the hell? Like, how do I
sounds poetic, but I'm good.
sounds poetic, right? Like, what is the path from poetic to practical? And that was really what drove my curiosity, really. And I was like, is anybody doing this? Does anybody love these questions? These questions are awful. Like, what does it mean to learn to love them? What does that look like? How do I learn from people that maybe have done this before? So that was really what kicked off this journey for me.
I mean, it might be like the nosy yenta in me, like what ended up happening with this marriage?
Yeah. Well, I trace it all in the book.
I know. I actually was telling everyone, just by the way, like I usually have my hands on a copy of a book before I do an episode. And like sometimes I have to read a book that I may not want to read. But like this one, I because I was like out of the country and like in hospital, I didn't get to read the physical copy of it. I looked over the digital version, but I do all my reading on Shabbat. So like I'm gonna have to find out after. But like this book, I like looked at the different chapters, like this is so me. Like that is like a book that I will like consume in one Shabbat.
Okay, well,
So I'll have to wait to know. I guess I'll have to wait to know what happened.
I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna give you the good kind of uncertainty, right? And I write in the book about there's types of uncertainty where, right, you don't want the uncertainty about your marriage and your career and all of that, but it can be fun to have a little uncertainty when it comes to an unresolved story, right? So I will let you sit with that. I won't give it away, but all I will say is that wisdom from Rilke and what I learned ended up really transforming the way that I approached my husband and the marriage.
Interesting.
I will say that.
Okay, that.
And I will say no more.
All right. Okay, so this whole uncertainty thing, again, to me, it sounds like very like philosophical, like poetic, like, but you're coming in here with like a behavioral lens. You know, behaviorists don't typically like love the fluff of poetry or philosophy. So I want to know, like, you coming in to write this, like, seems interesting to me. Like, I mean, I want to know how you fuse the two things together.
Mm-hmm. So I think that this is where the journalism and applied behavioral science, like, this is where I think because I've spent my career kind of working at different intersections and then, working at a think tank and seeing kind of the policy world and now working in tech and seeing that, like, I have a deep belief that we get to the best answers when we look across disciplines. And I think particularly when it comes to questions of human behavior, these like really, really thorny, complex questions, it is so important to look at all of the different traditions that have tried to understand this big question of how do we live better? How do we sit with uncertainty? And so yes, it's poetry and philosophy and science that I'm drawing from, but also spirituality, right? I think that it's very easy, especially if you're trained as a scientist, to dismiss religion or to dismiss spirituality as a as an input to this broader kind of
Right. Like we
tapestry.
like even when we're like teaching people for the test, it's like, yeah, no, we don't like subscribe to mentalisms at all. So like it's like, oh, but if it's not behavioral, then which me on a personal level, like I am someone who is spiritual, you know? And
Sure.
so it's
And I think part of this is, and part of my journey in the book, I talk about the fact that I was talking about this idea of fast, easy answers and being really susceptible to the kind of gurus of the world, right? And I myself have been very susceptible. One of the stories that I tell in the book is about my own experience with astrologers and astrology, and being like, well, I'm a science writer. Like, I don't believe in that. There's no evidence, right? And this is BS. And the kind of journey that I took to realize, well, I can believe in it or not believe in it, but the fact is that a lot of people use this in their lives. There is a reason that it has been so enduring in our culture over millennia. And so I think that as students of human behavior, we can't just ignore some of
mhm.
these things, right? Like, we can believe it or not believe it in our own lives, but I think as somebody that wants to understand, you can't kind of turn a blind eye to it, right? You have to understand, well, what is this doing for us, and how do we understand its place in our culture and its place in answering this larger question. So I think, to me, because this was such a big question, it demanded that we look across disciplines and look to see what is somebody like Rilke, who's not a trained scientist, but he, for me, helped completely kind of change the way that I frame a relationship to uncertainty. And we know that reframing, right, is a very powerful intervention in the behavioral literature. And so I think there are all sorts of ways that people in the humanities, whether it's a novelist or a poet, have intuitive methods or ideas that actually translate over into science in a really interesting way.
So I know as, you know, scientists, we're always looking at like, okay, well, like how can we write this out as like actual behavior someone can engage in? Or oftentimes when I'm writing a behavior, I mean, or anyone is in as a BCBA is writing a behavior program, it's like, okay, well, what are the behaviors that they need to do here? Like these are like,
Mhm.
okay, well, if someone says like compliance, like, okay, but like what does that look like behaviorally? Like that's just like a non-behavior to me. That means like you're just like not doing anything. Like a dead man can do it. We have a dead man test, right? That we're like, okay, it's not behavior if a dead man can do it. But what do these look like in action form
Yeah,
of behaviors as opposed to being like, okay, it's just sitting in it, which like to me
totally.
actually would not pass the dead
No.
man test because like can a dead man sit in something and not take any action? Yes. So like that, which means
Totally.
it's not a behavior.
Agreed. So, one of the things that I was seeking to do as part of this book was to really kind of explore, as we've been talking about, what does this practically look like? And what does this look like in terms of not just the first part of what Rilke mentioned, which is loving the questions, but a second part of his quote that I didn't mention earlier, which is living the questions. What does it look like to live the questions? And one of the reasons that I like this part of his quote too is because it really imbues this sense of sitting with uncertainty with vitality, with momentum. And so, what does it look like to kind of create that momentum in your own life? So, I, as part of the book, created a questions map, which is really intended to help folks um, uh, develop their own questions practice. And what a questions practice is, you can think of it like a meditation practice or a yoga practice or anything that you're kind of regularly turning to. Um, and with a questions practice, the difference is you are working with the big questions in your life. You're working to try to get to know them a little bit better. And you're trying to figure out, am I asking the right questions, first of all? And we can talk about how to know if you're asking the right questions. And then you're trying to understand, okay, once I feel like I have the right question, how am I going about trying to answer that question? And what are the resources that I need? And so this questions map and this questions practice that I lay out in the book is really anchored to four key elements. And this is what I learned throughout my research and reporting are really the most important parts of being able to kind of exist for longer in uncertainty for the purpose, not just to find an answer, right? But to find clarity. And I think that's a really important distinction is we're not always going to find answers to these big questions, but what we can find is clarity. And what we can do is get unstuck and continue to move forward in the unknown. And so I'll kind of go through these four components right now. And again, we can talk a little bit more about some of the specific like prompts in the map and some of the things that I would guide folks towards. So the first one, unsurprising, is curiosity. And these, I should say, 4 C's to make it a little easier to remember. So with curiosity, the big behavior in this is you're really trying to figure out ways to turn towards your big questions, your anxiety, the stress that you're feeling with more curiosity than fear. And so this part of the book really lays out how do you do that? Like what are some of the strategies and tactics to convert that fear into curiosity in some of the most challenging moments of our lives? Because we know that can be a major antidote to feeling that kind of like anxiety and stress around uncertainty. The second core piece is community. And we can talk more about this too, but I found again and again that the people that were able to really embody this practice of loving the questions, of living the questions, were the people who had surrounded themselves with supportive communities and communities of people fundamentally who were often going through very similar things, right? So if you're going through, chronic illness, if you're a new parent, if you're going through a career change, right? Like these can feel very lonely and isolating. And often just feeling connected with other people can really help you sit with those questions and develop different relationships to them and to yourself. The third piece is conversation. So really, this part of the book is about how do you have different conversations, different types of conversations with yourself and with others to help in those moments of feeling like, I don't know, Liat, if you've ever experienced this, but like that anxiety spiral, right? Like you're asking yourself.
You're literally like when you said to me earlier, I like literally like could like feel it in my stomach going back to that place of like, I'm divorced, but going back to that place of being like, am I in the right place? Like, wait, no, like I can't. And you're like, okay, well, I want to make a decision because I don't want to like sit in this between now or then.
Yeah.
Like either like I'm locked in here or I'm getting out, but like I don't have time to like do like, okay, like in between and like that discomfort. And it's almost like what you were talking about is like, I like to solve things immediately. First of all, I'm impulsive in general. Okay. Like I'd say more than like the average person. Like if there's something, the problem, I need to fix it right then. Right. But it's like, so I have this need. I mean, but I'm like this with everything as well. Meaning like if someone writes me an email and I get it at 10:30 at night, I need to respond right then because like, what if I'm not going to like, it's bothering me that it's there. It's like aversive. Like I need that negative reinforcement of like, ugh, right. The same
Totally.
goes with this. When it's discomfort, I'm like, I'm trying to decrease the latency as much as possible until I respond. But actually, like what you're saying is you actually kind of want to increase that latency of responding. And because oftentimes, I mean, I assume a lot of what I've seen, especially with people that I work with, will be like, just sit with it for a second. You don't have to respond right now for so many things. Whereas and sometimes way better answers are thought up because of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think it's so situational too, because I think that when it comes to, maybe there are some emails that you can fire off quickly because you're like, I know the answer to that. I don't need to sit on it. Right. But I think
but life's decisions, like you were saying, like when it was like, should I stay or should I go? I remember just like obsessing, looking up articles that would like support one, like you're searching everyone else's things except for your own.
Totally.
Like, and you try to find things that are support, and this is before ChatGPT, but like, which is like literally reinforced to respond to you exactly how you need. But like, I'd look for articles being like, yeah, it's totally normal to feel this way, and be like, oh, okay, fine, thank God, so I could stay. It's totally normal the first year of having a baby to feel like you are in the complete wrong place. Okay, cool. But then it would come back again. Because like
totally. No, it's so hard, and I think a lot of what it comes down to is well, there are a couple questions here that come to mind for me. One is, am I making this decision from a place of fear or curiosity, right? Like where is this coming from? Is this a compulsion? Am I like trying to just like get out of this to avoid this? Or maybe not even curiosity, but like knowing, right? Like there's a, I think, and this is another thing that I think as sometimes kind of science practitioners, right? Like intuition gets a really bad rap. We're just like intuition, whatever, that's BS. But I think there is a way in which, knowing comes from developing a deeper relationship with yourself through kind of practices of self-compassion, which I get into in the book as well. One of the things that I talk about in the book is that your relationship to yourself is really a proxy for your relationship to uncertainty, right? So the better your relationship is to yourself, the better you're able to kind of understand your own emotions, regulate your own emotions, the better you're able to respond to and regulate your response to uncertainty in the world. And so they're really just deeply interconnected, even though we tend to think about uncertainty as that like external thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I think in this case, right, the thing that I would think about is, are you making the decision based on some kind of like fear-based compulsion? Or are you making it from that kind of sense of deeper curiosity or knowing? One kind of unlock that I had too, just kind of in my own life, was I would often find that when I was like searching to validate something, or I was just like really in my head and, like listening to all the podcasts, like just trying to figure out like, what should I think about this thing? I would ask myself, what do I want somebody else to tell me to do? Like what, because like I would also go into, a therapy session and I would have this idea in my head of like, I wish my therapist could just give me permission to do this, or I wish somebody could just tell me this is okay. And then I was like, well, wait, I can just tell myself that, right? Like I can just tell myself, hey, this is okay to think this, or this is, and so that's another way of thinking about it too, is like sometimes we actually know what we want or what we think is right, and we're kind of just waiting for somebody else to tell us that this is okay or to give us permission.
That's what I'm saying.
It.
I literally was looking for specific articles.
Yes, totally. Which is, it's fascinating. It's like, okay, well, what if I just told myself that this was okay and gave myself permission, which doesn't always work, right? But I think is sometimes can kind of unlock a knowing that you have about what's right for your own life, for your own self.
You like took me back there. I'm glad I'm not there anymore,
Oh my gosh. Listen, I will say this too, like, I really wrote this book to be a guide for folks who are going through really painful questions in their lives. Like, and this goes back, in the first few pages of the book, I write about why I think this idea of embracing uncertainty is just really annoying and kind of like one of the biggest platitudes in our like self-help world. Because to me, it's just this form of like toxic positivity, right? It's like, oh, just like embrace uncertainty. It's all going to be okay. And to me, that's just so tone deaf, right? When it comes to these questions around relationships, around parenting, around career, life purpose and meaning, these like really, really tough questions. So I really wrote this for people that are chafing against that in our culture, but who are still seeking just like a guide and a friend to go along the journey with them of like, how do you do this? How do you actually translate this poetic idea into something that you can use in your own life?
It's behavior, bitches.
Are you a BCBA now and you are sad because you hate your job? Are you thinking, I worked so effing hard and here I am dreading Monday? Well, you're not the only one. We get that message all the time, and we decided to do something about it. Welcome our newest baby, Pair ABA by Study Notes ABA. What is this? Well, we pair you with jobs that you actually don't hate. Imagine that. Imagine going to work on Monday and being excited about it. Imagine working somewhere where you're appreciated, you're paid well, they're doing ethical practice, and you love what you do. Well, that's not impossible because we have formed Pair ABA, where we talk to clinics that we would actually want to work at. We're not going to send you anywhere. We are assessing these clinics to see, are they doing the good work? Are they not telling you one thing and then having you do another thing once you sign on? If you're concerned that you're not happy or you're feeling unsettled where you are, don't settle. Don't settle in relationships. Don't settle in work. Realize your value. Let us help you find a job where you are happy. All you need to do is head on over to pairaba.com. The response effort is low. Fill out the form so we can help you find job options near you. If you're a clinic and you think you're good enough for us to place at, also head over to pairaba.com. And we will see, are you good enough for our badass BCBAs who we protect? Go check it out, pairaba.com. Love you, mean it. Amazing. You said there was 4, right? You said there was 4
Yes,
seasons?
sorry, last one.
Yes,
We got
number 4.
stuck on a tangent. The fourth one is commitment. And the idea behind this is you do really need to commit to this process of knowing your questions a little bit better, knowing yourself a little bit better. One of the ways to do this is through rituals, is through kind of these practices. A questions practice can be one. It's not the only one, but one of the things that I talk about in the book is the power of rituals in helping us to navigate and reduce that aversive kind of anxiety that can come along with uncertainty in your life. So that's commitment in a nutshell.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, so it can look
Like a
different
practice.
for
Like what
everyone.
could the practice, like one example?
Oh, sure. So, so I give a bunch of different kind of ritual stories and examples of folks in the book. Everything from a professor that I spoke to who ended up really getting into martial arts and the kind of rituals behind martial arts when he experienced the death of his father and 9/11 at the same time, and also his son had just been born, and it was just kind of a confluence of things that had left him really, really shaken and deeply uncertain about the future. And so he found this kind of deep sense of security in an uncertain world in this kind of ritualized exercise, right? And the community around it and all of these elements of it. So that's one example. Another example could be creating your own questions practice. So maybe this is a regular time that if you have a little bit of time in the morning or a little bit of time in the evening, you're just taking some of the prompts that I share in the questions map, and you're working with your questions, and you're trying to understand, is this the right question that I'm asking? Or maybe you're just starting with like, what are the questions that are kind of guiding my life right now? I think a lot of us feel just kind of like anxiety day to day, but we don't always stop to think about, well, what are there questions behind this anxiety? Are there questions behind this fear? And a lot of times there are, and we're not even aware of those questions. And so even kind of bringing awareness to the big questions of our lives, and understanding, for instance, is this question that I'm asking like a binary question, right? And for me, this question of, should I get a divorce? Am I in the right relationship? Those are binary questions. And so one of the things that I realized and that I talk about in the book is there's a tremendous amount of power that comes from reframing some of these big questions into ones that are more expansive, that can actually help expand the aperture of kind of possibilities of different kinds of solutions, different kinds of ideas, versus narrowing you into yes or no. Another type of ritual might be, maybe it's a religious ritual, right? Like I think that one of the things that I talk about in the book is there's kind of like a spiritual rhythm of seeking and dwelling, and there are many kind of religious calendars that encourage, through holidays and through other practices, kind of this continuous, like, hey, we're in the world, we're celebrating, we're seeking answers, and then we're taking some time to rest, and we're dwelling, and we're reflecting, right? And so of course you see this with something called like Shabbat, right, where it's this moment of this ritual once a week where you take some time and you rest, and maybe that's another opportunity for you to feel more connected in community, something that you can rely on, that's ultimately helping you feel more anchored in a world that can feel very chaotic and uncertain. So I think a lot of the research on ritual suggests that, exactly this, that ritualized activities just again are this other source for us to be able to exist longer in uncertainty because of the security that they give us during the unstable times that we might be in.
It's actually crazy that you say that because, I observe Shabbat. So like I don't have all the other distractions or the noise during that time. And like almost every Shabbat, and while I was married, like, or when I was in this, once I was married and like was in this stage of like, am I Shabbat and Jewish holidays where like I'm no longer using my phone, I'm not working, I'm not like, I'm literally still, I'm with this person, either that or myself, which is like, both like, and also like loneliness obviously with someone is way worse than loneliness alone to me anyways,
Totally.
I
Totally.
think. But I would get sick. I would like, I have lupus, which like, and so my flare ups would always be on Shabbats and I'd have
Mm.
to go to the hospital. It was like I literally couldn't sit with this. It would actually like put me into like physical, whatever it is, that like I'd end up in the hospital because like that uncertainty was so horrible. Like that I literally had like
Oh,
physical repercussions. And like Shabbat in one way, like I always say, like it's definitely what saved me in terms of like my health, like that I actually do stop once a week.
mm.
But also during times of uncertainty, it would kill me because it was like I
Oh,
couldn't feel
man.
like I was taking any actions towards any change, right? Because you're like just sitting in something, which I find
Yeah.
like interesting. And
Super hard. And that's why I think ritual can look really different for everyone, right? Like ritual for some people can look like action that you're taking once a week, right? It's like, I think the professor that I mentioned who took up this practice of martial arts was like, yeah, I knew that I wasn't going to get through what I had to get through by just like sitting and reflecting in my room, right? Like I had to go out and do something. Like I had to move my body. I had to, and so I think,
like
I
it could
try
look
to lay out
different.
about
Yeah.
for everybody it looks different. Exactly. I think the important part is that it's something that, it's intentional. It's, something regular. You have this kind of meaning behind it. But yes, for everybody it's gonna look different and certain things will resonate. But that's, yeah, that's it's really interesting, right? Like how different people react to different types of rituals for sure.
Totally. And also I like the I don't know if that was with the conversations with yourself part, that you were talking about the question, which I think is really interesting because we do talk about it also like in behavioral science of, hey, are we asking the right question of what we're trying to change? Like someone came in saying, hey, we want to stop our kid from tantruming, whatever it is. But it's like, oh, actually, like we're not asking the right question. Like, why are they tantruming? It's like maybe we need to be asking like what skills do they have to communicate, or
Mm,
and also like are we using the right measurement system, or like, hey, I want to know like why I'm not losing weight but I know that I'm at the gym for 3 hours a day. It's like, well, are you asking the right question by looking at time? Maybe you should be looking at like elevated heart rate, and so like
totally.
these things that we get locked in, that this is the question, do I stay or do I not, I just remember my dad coming to me at one point and being like, okay, so like if you decide you're going to stay right now, fine, like you're staying. But like it was like this crazy concept to me that like even the most permanent things are never stuck. He told me like there's always a way out of something, But to me, it felt like I need to make a decision. I need to go now, or I need to like lock in and stay, you know. And it was
Yes.
like
Yes.
it was like the craziest, most profound concept to me that like you could decide to stay, and like later on, like you're like locking in to stay. But to me, it was like either like this decision needs to be made. And the reason I felt that is because I had locked in, like it must be made that I must go, or but I can't live here.
Right, right. No, I think you're pointing to such an important piece of this, which you can start to unravel when you do kind of gain that awareness of your questions, which is, is there a false sense of urgency around this? Like, am I putting pressure on myself to resolve this, at a certain time? Does it really need to be resolved at that time? Like, can I wait a little longer? Like, but I think to your point, it's like, it feels bad, so you just have this sense of like, I need to answer this now. But then again, is there a way to give yourself a little bit more space? And so one of the things that I suggest is you can kind of evaluate your questions based on a few different levels. And sometimes this is something that can help give you a little bit of space in those moments where you're feeling that sense of like, I have to know now. One is that question of, is it expansive? So are you asking a binary question, or is there a way to open up your question and make it one that isn't leading you to two directions? So an example, right, from my own life, I was asking that question of, should I get a divorce? Eventually that question became, what would have to change for us both to stay together, right? And so you can see how that question's evolution, all of a sudden I'm thinking about a whole different kind of set of possibilities. It's not just like, should I stay or should I go? Like, yes or no. It's, okay, well, like what might I need to do differently? What might he need to do differently? Like, is that even possible? So it starts this different conversation with yourself and with your partner. The other piece of this is, is your question looking forward versus keeping you stuck in the past, keeping you stuck in kind of patterns of regret and rumination. A lot of times a question, that we're asking could be like, well, what if I had done this? Or like, why didn't I do this? Or, those questions that are really tinged with regret. And a lot of times those questions, they're not moving us forward. They're not really doing anything for us. We're really better off releasing those questions versus carrying them forward, or figuring out what is the forward looking question that I can ask. So, those are just kind of a couple of ways of rethinking the question. And again, like, is this the right question for me? And final thing that I'll say is, sometimes we may unknowingly be asking someone else's question, right? Like maybe your parents have asked you a question that you internalized, but when you think about it at the end of the day, you're like, is this my question? Or like, do I even want to be asking this question? So another kind of final piece that you can ask yourself is this question actually leading me back to something that is important to me? Is it serving as a kind of internal GPS, right? If it's not, you don't need it, or you can reframe it, rethink it so that it is. But so I would say those three pieces: is it expansive, kind of beyond that binary? Is it leading back to you, that internal GPS? And is it forward looking, right? Versus keeping you stuck in regret and rumination. That's a little litmus test that you can use for your own questions that also is in the book.
That's so helpful. I know that research shows that I could say even working with kids, in the field, but even my own child, research shows that we're getting worse at tolerating uncertainty over time, even though we have more information at our fingertips with like AI knowing everything. What do you think is the cause of this?
Yeah, so this is a big question in the field, and I think the answer is that there are likely many different causes. One that I write about, and the kind of researcher that I cite in the book, is a professor at the University of Virginia, Nicholas Carlton. And his research suggests a correlation, not causation, but correlation, with the rise of smartphones and our ability to tolerate uncertainty. So what he is suggesting in his research that I think tracks, but again, probably more complicated than this, is that as we've become more reliant on our smartphones to deliver answers to just about anything we need in our life, we are losing opportunities to build our uncertainty tolerance muscles day to day. So if you think about, and I really like this analogy, right? Because it's like, you imagine that you are entering like a big like weightlifting competition, and it's like 6 months from now, and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to like deadlift like hundreds of pounds. You would not probably show up to that competition not having spent every day at the gym doing lighter weights, really like building those muscles so that you're prepared. But that's kind of what we're doing when it comes to not really being prepared for these like big life uncertainties, these big life questions, by every day, like just answering every little small question in our lives that maybe we could, in some cases, take the opportunity to sit with a little bit more uncertainty. So practically, what does this mean? Maybe one day, instead of immediately Yelping a restaurant or like looking up a menu before you go to a place, you just don't, right? And you go and you ask the server like, hey, what's the most popular thing here? And you order it and you eat it, right? Like, I know that sounds absolutely crazy to a lot of people, right? Because you're like, well, I need to know what I'm going to get. But these are just like little ways in our lives that you can start to build back that uncertainty muscle and realize like, oh, okay, maybe I liked that food, maybe I didn't. I survived,
I mean,
right?
we really
And
have
it was
none of it. Even when I think of a restaurant, it's like I've already seen the exact picture on Yelp of the food I'm getting. So like
100%.
there's no uncertainty like am I getting a good Caesar salad or not? Like I could tell exactly what kind of Caesar salad I should be getting.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
everything I want to know in that moment. I mean, and we see it with
Yeah.
kids. I mean, we've even before like, you know, it's a known thing like are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Like or like no, mom, I want the toy now, you know? And like I mean, I deal with
Totally.
that with my own son, but it is this idea that like we are consistently just wanting it now. So these little exercises
Totally.
to increase tolerance.
Totally. Exactly. No. So if you think about it as a muscle, and I literally just this week did a Q&A with I don't know if you know Melinda Wenner Moyer, but she's an amazing science journalist who writes about parenting and kind of evidence-based parenting. And we just did a Q&A on her Substack that looks at well, on my Substack and her Substack, we both did Q&As with each other, but we were really exploring how do you help kids develop this skill of navigating uncertainty. And so obviously my work focuses on helping adults navigate that skill. Her work focuses on kids. And so we were kind of combining our expertise and pairing it together. But I think it's so important. You have to be able to kind of have this skill yourself and model it for your kids, but then also what are all the ways that you can help your kids do that, especially in the world that we're living in today. So totally hear that.
Super interesting. I mean, and especially with behaviors of like emotional regulation of any form. Like it's so modeled to kids. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, 100%.
Okay, so just one final question for the end of the day. If someone is listening right now and they're totally frozen by a big life question, career, relationship, health, what's one thing they can do today?
Yeah. So, gosh, I would say two things. One is just know before I give you an action, you are not alone. If there's one thing that my book really wants to show, it's that everybody is going through so many, big life uncertainties. You are not the only one. And so that's just one thing to recognize. I would say it's hard to select one thing. I'm going to share two things because I think they're both equally important.
Okay.
One is if it's at all possible for you, finding a community of people who are sharing that particular life transition or that particular question, if that's something that is in the realm of possibility for you. If it's not, another thing that you can do is you can take the question and you can use some of the prompts that I shared and you can start to explore, is this the right question? And if it's not the right question, sometimes changing your question is enough to really change the way that you're thinking about your future, right? Thinking about the possibilities, thinking about the answers, the solutions. The question changes the way that you think about what is possible for you. So those are the kind of key things that I would think about in a moment like that.
Amazing. And where can everyone find your book?
Yeah, it is available wherever books are sold. So you can really find it anywhere from hopefully your neighborhood bookshop to any of the big online retailers. But you can also go to my website, elizabethweingarten.com, and you can find me on Substack as well. I write a Substack called Time Travel for Beginners. So would love to see you there.
All right, guys, go over there. And by the way, we're a bunch of reinforcers as behaviorists. So I know I've spoken to some authors recently, and they're like, when someone leaves a review on Goodreads, it makes me so happy. Is that true?
Oh my gosh, Goodreads, Amazon, like reviews are awesome. Yes.
So like
more
everyone, like you guys know the power of reinforcement. So go over there, read the book, leave the reinforcement. Also go leave 5-star reinforcement on my podcast, obviously. I always have to beg them. It's amazing. You guys are going to do it anyways, right? Right. Great. All right. And the one thing I just want to end on, when I was listening in, and some advice I give people often when they're studying or whatever it is, and like they're scared, like, this test feels like a life-changing decision. Like, do you invest in it? Do you not? I'm talking about the PCBA exam for anyone listening, but this generalizes to any area of your life. As I always say, like, whatever you're going through in that moment, like, feels uncertain, right? Because you haven't come into contact with that contingency yet. Like, what's going to happen? But like, look back at all the past contingencies you've got through up until this point, where you felt, where that you had that same antecedent of being like uncertain. You did something, and then somehow like you're on the other side. So in that moment, you can't feel that like whatever's going on, but for that specific situation. But you could look back at your past contingencies and be like, everything in my life up until now, I've gotten through, whether it was a hard test, a hard relationship, an illness that I thought I'd never get out of, or whatever it is. So that would just be my advice, listening in and being like, to trust yourself and be like, everything up until now I've got through, this will be another thing. And just that has helped me a lot. And what I tell a lot of students when, doing something hard. So that's my.
And by the way, that is actually backed up by the psychological evidence. So that is a concept that I talk about in the book too, the kind of like mental time travel, and how it actually absolutely, as you're saying, helps you better kind of stabilize and navigate uncertainty. So everything you're saying is like actually real science.
So I'm kind of smart. All right. I like it. All right, guys. The book is How to Fall in Love with Questions by Elizabeth Weingarten. Go and get it. I'll have everything in the show notes for you. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on. This is such a great topic. I actually ordered on Amazon copies, but I won't have it here by this Shabbat. So I told you I'm getting your phone number after the show so I could text you as things come up.
Love it. Love it. No, I love it. It was so great to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Too.
And really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, you know where you could find us. You could find us on behaviorbitches.com. Tell us what topics you want, what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of. Leave us 5-star reviews everywhere. Go subscribe on YouTube. We put a lot of effort into this. And you can find us on Instagram at Behavior Bitches Podcast, TikTok, and what am I forgetting? Facebook. Are we still doing that? Yeah, we are. Yeah, Behavior Bitches Podcast. And that's all we have for you today. As always, love ya. Mean it.
It's Behavior Bitches.
Hey, Behavior Bitches besties. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time and stopping and watching all of our content on YouTube. We put a lot of effort into putting these podcasts into YouTube. That means I have to get dressed for the day, do my makeup, and actually show up when I used to come in looking completely homeless to record because no one could see my face. This being said, for us to keep doing this, we live for your subscription. So please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and like and leave us comments and love. Live for the love and keep tuning in, and you'll always know when our new episode drops. Love you. Mean it.